Firstly, I'd just like to say thank you very much. It's actually, I'm delighted to be asked to speak, and I suspect a number of people who are listening at the moment will be very confused why we're talking about regeneration of Devon and regeneration in our communities generally, and you've got somebody from a bus company, and a commercial bus company at that, talking to you. Our bus company is part of the Go Ahead Group, which is an international transportation group. It might not at first glance look like the obvious type of organisation that should be talking to you about community inclusion or regeneration or social enterprise, but hopefully by the time I've gone through my slides you can see how we genuinely believe that we integrate into our communities and how that sense of community pervades everything that we do. In terms of my role, I have a fairly unique role, I think, because I hold, as an HR professional, I hold the role of Head of People and Operations. So essentially, I run the traffic department, for want of a better descriptor, which is all of our drivers across Plymouth and Cornwall fall under my remit, as well as the whole of the human resources function. In terms of my background, I've only been working here officially since April of this year, so I have to say that what I'm going to talk about I can't take credit for. Most of the achievements that have happened in this business over the last couple of years and previous to that are actually down to my predecessor and the amazing management team that I've got here, and I think hopefully you'll understand that from a cultural perspective, very much our sense of community is led from the top. We have a managing director who feels really strongly about how we as a business fit into our communities, and you'll notice that although I am talking to a group from mostly Devon, I have got a picture of buses from Cornwall sitting on my slides. Hopefully that will become obvious in a minute for you. Previously, I've worked as a human resources consultant. I've worked with lots of social enterprises, and also I sit on the Devon and Plymouth Chamber of Commerce, and have done for about eight years. So hopefully, part of my role there is also to link into inclusive growth. So I sit on the Inclusive Growth Board with Plymouth City Council as well, and also have worked previously with a number of social enterprises, I say, and sit as a representative of the Chamber on the Plymouth Social Enterprise Network. So hopefully that background will support you and assist you as well. Can I have my next slide, please? Thank you. So what makes us different? I particularly like the illustration that I've put on this slide. And we are an organisation that's been known as Plymouth Citybus for many, many years. In January of this year, we were awarded the contract to deliver all of the council tendered bus services in Cornwall, hence the Go Cornwall bus. But for me, it's about the outer ring, and the outer heart of our business is exactly that. It's about understanding that we are all about our people. And as a result of that, we have received a number of awards. So in 2019, we were given from the National Transport Awards. We received Best Bus Operator of the Year. We've also just received Investors in People Platinum. It was awarded in 2019, but we actually got the plaque this year. We have a Queen's Award, and that's about our social mobility, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. We actually have a positive gender pay gap, which I think is fascinating in a transportation organisation that is heavily dominated by men, but a lot of work has gone into actually how we pay everybody in our organisation and where fairness would sit there. As I've said earlier, we've just won an 8-year contract to provide the bus services across Cornwall. So for me, I am always fascinated by our invisible divides that we have in the southwest, whether that's the line that seems to sit between Plymouth and Exeter, whether it's the River Tamar between Devon and Cornwall, and I'm absolutely delighted that I can work across both counties now, because I think in terms of inclusion and in terms of growth, I think it's absolutely critical that we share with each other and we work in a way that includes people right across, and the travel to work area of Plymouth absolutely includes South East Cornwall as well. So in the last couple of months, we've basically doubled our turnover because we've just grown across Cornwall, and we've also doubled the number of employees. We are sitting at about 800-ish employees now, and we are anticipating that that may well grow towards 1,000 by the end of the year. Can I have my next slide, please? Thank you. What drives us? Because I'm new, I think that gives me a unique perspective on our organisation, and that perspective is sort of maybe different to those that have been working here for a while. And I think the key for me is around our values, beliefs and attitudes. Many of you will work in organisations that have values, that have beliefs, and you've probably got them written on your walls. The difference that I've genuinely noticed here is that people really live them, and they understand them. And I've had the pleasure of doing lots of interviews over the last few weeks, and it's incredible to listen to our employees talking about those values, and more importantly, not just listing them for me, but actually talking about what that means to them. And when you consider that we've got around 800 employees, the majority of the people that I speak to on a daily basis talk about this being a family. And I think that's quite unique for an organisation of this size, where people still feel that they are counted as an individual, that people know who they are, that they know their backgrounds. We have lots of families working here. It's inevitable, I think, in this type of industry where we have got, you know, we've got fathers and sons, we've got uncles and nephews, we've got uncles and nieces, we've got husbands and wives, we've got all sorts of families who actually work within our business. And that sense of family and that sense of community pervades everything that we do. Yes, of course, we've got our values and beliefs and attitudes written through all of our documentation. So it sits in our job descriptions, it sits in our performance management systems, it sits on our walls, it sits on our corporate plan, it's all there. But the bit that really makes a difference for me is that people really talk about it. And when you talk to our employees about the community, the stories that they can tell are phenomenal. I remember my first week here, and I went to talk to one of our depots. And they said, oh, can you just wait a minute, because somebody's just gone and sent a bus, because we left somebody at a bus stop and they need to pick up their daughter from school and we can't leave them there, so we just sent a bus to go and get them. And I think that whole sense of actually we don't leave anybody behind is a really strong one. And hopefully when you see when I talk about the Queen's Awards, you can see what we mean by that. If I could have the next slide, that probably will help. Thanks. So we have systems and processes, of course we do. Anyone who actually knows me knows that I'm not particularly rule focused. I don't like having 100 different policies and procedures that tell us how we can breathe, how we can step, what we can do next. We do actually rely on our supervisors and our managers to understand that essentially we have two guiding principles. The first guiding principle is it legal? And the second guiding principle is it safe? And if you make a decision within those guiding principles of safe and legal, then most of the time we will be absolutely backing you all the way as a supervisor or manager. And I think that's really important, that we do give that sense of freedom to our line managers, but within boundaries. Of course, we have policies and procedures. We couldn't function in an environment like this if we didn't. We are very closely monitored. But we also have regular employee surveys, and those employee surveys come from our group, from our overarching organisation, but also for our investors in people as well. And the thing that I really love is we have printed out every single comment that was made on last year's employee survey, and it's on the wall in the rest room. So every comment that every individual has made is there, and you can see it, and they can understand how they fit into the organisation, but also the comments that their colleagues have made as well, obviously anonymised. We have a performance management program called Self-Lens, so that's our appraisal system, for want of a better description, and it's a really simplified system whereby we actually ask people to sit there and look at themselves and raise their own self-awareness and have a conversation with their line manager once a year about how they're doing. And that's very focused on our beliefs and attitudes system. So they can see where they might need to improve, but also where they're doing incredibly well already. we have lots of communication systems, and that could be a challenge because we basically have an entire team of remote workers who are out on the road every day on their own. So we have to work through our communication systems. It's not perfect, but we're trying to find ways where we can reach everybody. And in the main, when you talk to people, they seem to feel that they know what's going on if they choose to. And I think that will always be a challenge, and it's not unique to us. It will be the same for many of you. And we have a really visible senior management and leading by example. I've put those two things together because the picture you have in front of you is our managing director during COVID driving a bus. It was really important to him that he demonstrated to our team that at a time, and this was at the height of COVID, I think this was in April, at a time when lots of our drivers were feeling incredibly vulnerable and worried about what they were facing on a day-to-day basis. We had a managing director who drove a full route in Cornwall, and he drove a full route in Plymouth as well, and that was an entire shift. And the great thing about him being able to do that was when we would next had our coronavirus meeting and our briefings, he could come back and say, I think we've missed a trick here. I think you don't understand that when you're sitting on a bus, this happens. And it really made a difference because obviously there were things that we thought we were doing really well, but until you actually sat in the driving seat, it was impossible to know if it was working, and he was able to feed that back. We invest significant amounts of money and time in training and development, and that kind of stems from growing our own. So many of our new drivers we have taken on who were not drivers to start with. So we don't have a great glut of bus drivers across the UK, so we grow our own. So we find people who think they might have an interest in driving a bus, and we take them from that point through to driving. And one of the things I love about working in this company is the number of people I've met who said, oh yeah, I came for a 6-month stopgap, that was 20 years ago. And that's a really common theme, is that actually there's something about working here, and there's something about that culture of family that keeps people here. And I think that's quite unique. Have the next slide, please.
Carolyn, can I just let you know that we are probably over our time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very, very quickly. That sense of community, and if we take you onto the Queen's Award, I think this is probably the element of our business that I think is most critical, which is the next slide. And what we have done as the business is that we have created an environment where we encourage people to come into our business from low-income backgrounds, from more vulnerable backgrounds, and not only that, but we work with our communities, ensuring that people can get to interviews and can look for work. And essentially, in terms of the Queen's Award, it's that social mobility that's enabled us to receive that. So I'm very happy to talk about that when we move on to the groups later on. I've talked about investing in people. I've talked about the gender pay gap. I mean, in terms of the gender pay gap, essentially, I'll just pick that up very quickly. We did do a real root and branch look at who we had in each position within the organisation, and because we pay our bus drivers reasonably well in Plymouth, we found that our support staff, who are mostly female, had fallen behind in terms of gender pay, and so we reviewed the entirety of our pay system, and now actually our support staff and our cleaners are paid exactly the same as our bus drivers. So we actually have that value-led approach to all of the positions in our organisation.